Ми видали, він працює. Доброго дня, колеги, вітаю вас.
Hello, dear colleagues. We welcome to the Ukraine Crisis Media Center, and we have a very interesting briefing today about the further development of legislation in the energy sphere, about the independent regulator and its role, and I think that we'll have a very good opportunity to explain why this issue is so important and what's going to happen in the Parliament next. So I give the floor to Olena Pavlenko, who is the president of the DiXi Group Analytical Center. You know, when the football game is played, it is very important how the referee works. If there's great things at stake, then there is a bigger, close attention to the referee. Energy and the market of gas and electricity and communal services is a high-stake game because it concerns the safety of people, and the referee who has to watch everybody on this market should be as independent as just as possible. It's well known that there's several draft laws in the Parliament in this sphere that should be adopted as soon as possible. I can provide three arguments. Not a single serious investor will come to Ukraine if they don't see what are the rules of the game in those markets. And second is the help of international financial donors. It is known that the law on regulator is the IMF and World Bank demand. And the third argument is, you know, when the tariffs for the population are increased, it is very important how the market works and to which extent the population trusts what's happening in the market. Understanding this situation, the Renaissance Foundation created a strategic advisory group which has to consolidate the efforts to involve professional brains and table such vision and such draft amendments that will make the market of gas, electricity and communal services active to the maximum and as comfortable for the people as possible. We started the work of this group, and the MPs who are here are members of this group. The Renaissance Foundation finances the work of this group, and there's a list of members of the group in your handouts, and also a document. This is not an analytical report yet, but the document that's been created as a result of discussions of the Energy Committee this year. We will collect comments from all the MPs with the risks that they see as far as the registered draft laws are concerned. Our international experts who are members of this group will assess the risks, and on the basis of those comments there will be recommendations on how the regulator should work. This is very timely, and this applies not only to the relations between major players, but it also has relation to communal services for every average citizen. Yevhen Bystrytsky, International Renaissance Foundation. This initiative started from assembling a conference about the counteracting the corruption in energy sphere in the end of July. The foundation's interest is that one of our constant initiatives is fighting against corruption, and we want to help public to decrease the impact of corruption in the country, and it's evident for us as the foundation that for 20 years has issued support for different anti-corruption projects. We still see that the level of corruption is not decreasing, and even after the Maidan we see that the level of corruption at least does not decrease at different levels. So we decided to work in a more systemic way. From our point of view, one of the most corruption-prone spheres is the energy sphere, for different reasons. It is most money-consuming. Then there's a lot of temptation there is to have a gray income, a shadow income, and to influence other state institutions to increase this illegal income. So we focused on this sphere, and one of the most critical issues is the issue of not only adopting market laws that by definition are better and more progressive for the energy sphere, like the law on the market of gas. We supported the work on it. As we know, there will be a law on electricity now. However, all those laws won't work adequately without an independent national commission that in the final count will control the regulation of the market itself. Because there's a lot of the so-called natural monopolies, and they are there to stay most probably, so there has to be an independent regulator that will adopt decisions that will help this market to function independently. At the moment, we regrettably may say that the National Commission, the regulator in the energy sphere now, and in communal services sector, is in fact not independent. And this concerns the way it's formed and how they adopt their decisions. It is linked to the Ministry of Energy, and of course the government itself is a result of some party agreements and the work of the parliament, so there is always at least an opportunity to use what we may say internal or shadow relations. So we understand this, and the conference that we held in July has corroborated these conclusions, our considerations. The fund decided to support the group of independent experts that worked to complete the law on regulator, which flopped in the parliament and which did not correspond to the European standards and did not correspond to the vision of independent experts delegated by public organizations. We decided to help them to launch an advocacy campaign of protecting and promoting this law so that the law becomes perfect, that would be adopted by the parliament in the nearest months, and we want to build such conditions for the functioning of the energy market that would be maximally protected from corruption. So this is our interest, and we are going to consistently implement it. I am Oleksandr Dombrovskyi. I am a first deputy chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Fuel and Energy, and I am an MP. I'd like to add something to what my colleagues said. I thank you for the opportunity of a team presentation, but first of all I'd like to say that the committee understands clearly that without adopting an objective law on an independent regulator, the entire model of energy sector in Ukraine won't work. So what are the key tasks that we see which we have to complete before the year ends? You know that we voted for the gas market law, and we are now working on the whole system of regulatory acts so that the law is launched and works normally in Ukraine. The second position, yesterday at the session of the committee, we considered the law on electricity market, which is very important and which has to meet the requests of the third energy package of the European Union. And there's a very intensive work on this draft law at the moment, and I do want to thank sincerely the DiXi Group, because they are a basic institution to present and discuss this draft law with profile and public organizations. And the third position is that we badly need the law on independent regulator. The model, as I see it, you know, there's a gas market and the electricity market, and then there's a huge and complicated market of local, communal heat energy. If there's no focal point in this triangle, then not a single corner of this triangle will work in an efficient way. So when we consider the draft law that was not adopted, and I think this is very good that the committee and the parliament have shown their character in this, because there were such tools in this instrument, in this draft law, that did not correspond institutionally, constitutionally, or economically to today's requests. I think that the group that's been formed and is being supported as a philosophy and as a platform by the Profile Committee, because many members of our committee have been taking part and will be taking part in the work. We want this referee or arbiter to be effective, efficient, independent, and professional. But I also want to stress that when there are non-comprehensible and non-transparent rules, then the referee cannot be objective. And even if you change rules of football, then you cannot play it. So we're not talking only about the referee, but also about the rules that have to exist in the state, that have to be formalized clearly on the level of the parliament, procedures and regulations for the National Committee of Regulation that have to be confirmed by the Cabinet of Ministers to keep the balance of professional independence on the one hand, and on the other hand, certain possibilities, opportunities for the executive power to influence this or that policy. And probably the major thing is that our market works efficiently. And another point, on the eve of local elections, I would like very much to depoliticize the process of drafting the law on the regulator as much as possible, because regulator is tariffs, and we understand how complicated and sometimes non-transparent the position is. So we have to move this process away from politics, make it transparent, deep, and professional. I understand that this is the major task that united us and led here.
Good afternoon. I'm Alyona Babak. I'm Deputy Head of the Parliamentary Committee on Construction, Urban Development and Housing. I'm a Member of Parliament and member of this group. And from the name of my parliamentary committee, you understand that I would like to discuss the utilities sphere, the water supply organizations, heating supply enterprises, etc. The law which we're discussing today, the law on the regulator in this area should regulate extremely important areas of our everyday life. This will be tariffs for water supply, gas supply, heating, and we do not have people in this room who never heard about the issues in this sphere, about tariffs, about the problems, how to be connected to the networks, water supply, heat supply networks, to electrogrids, etc. And when we ask questions on these matters, we quite often are told, appeal to the regulator. Regulator will sort it out. So the role of the regulator as a referee is very important. Let's imagine what is his role in the stadium, so to say. Half of the stadium may shout his wrong about the referee, but the game goes on, and the game is stopped only in the moment when it is proved that the rules were breached, etc. That is, we have to concentrate tomorrow on this body, on the rules which we will set for this body operation. That's why we try to understand how we should properly appoint the members of this commission, whether they should be the president, the parliament, etc. But anyway, all those commission members will have experts at their disposal. I think the rules of the game, which we state for the government, the payers, the sector participants, the rules are very important, and the transparency of the process is very important. And here the analog of the football game is good. So the rules, transparency of activities and transparency of decisions made should be clearly seen, clearly understandable for all the stakeholders. At the beginning of our discussion, we mentioned that unfortunately all those issues are not regulated properly. First of all, what is the scope of responsibilities of this body? For example, the waste treatment, currently it falls within this body scope of responsibility, which probably should not be. What do we understand under transparency of the rules? Just one example. Recently, there was a joint meeting between representatives of the regulator and our committee, and the regulator mentioned we have a big heat supply enterprise based on the dairy plant, and they try to set tariffs at the level of 6,800 hryvnia, while all the rest heat generators put 3,000 with something. But we asked the question, upon what salary you should base your tariffs, whether this is regulated by legislation. So this lack of general rule applied to the entire sector shows what needs to be done. And speaking about that dairy plant, the salary which they indicated as the base for their tariff is natural, because in that plant, which is the important enterprise for this small town, they have a transparent salary, and it is high enough against the neighboring towns. So what do international regulators, like in Australia, in the United States, do? They have a long history of the system for regulating natural monopolies. They have clear rules for the regulator, how to develop framework rules for setting tariffs. That is, the regulator has to request threshold for the salaries that are taken as a basis for tariff calculation. Then public discussion is held. The state, the monopolies, the natural monopoly, and the public discuss this written suggestions received from the companies, from enterprises, and request from them some grounds and explanations for their figures, and based on this information, the regulator makes a final decision about the rules. And those who still disagree with the regulator, they may appeal to court, but upon court judgment, this won't be any further issues for the regulator. Which salary should be taken as the basis for tariff calculation? If the average salary in some town is a bit higher than the sectoral one, then it should be made the rule by the regulator that in this or that cases it should be taken as a base. This procedure is called rules of rule making. This is the fundamental things which should be present in the activities of the regulator. By now, we do not have such a procedure. Usually, in our practice, the regulator puts the rules on the website and requests our feedback. That's it. If you look at the websites of all our regulators, you see how they invite you to discuss the issues of depreciation, losses, etc. But this is the process. We should gain trust in result of the process. Just look, we have gas tariffs now, but we have a lot of disagreement with these tariffs in society. People appeal to the parliament, to the ministry, etc. We have to set the rules, how we will formulate the rules for tariff setting, and how consumers, the businesses, and the state should be involved in the tariff setting process. That is what we want to see in the new law, which we want to pass in the parliament, and we believe that the members of parliament will have similar vision of the process.
Доброго дня.
Hello, colleagues. I'm Oleksiy Ryabchyn from the Committee on Fuel and Energy Complex, Batkivshyna faction. First of all, my gratitude to DiXi Group and the Renaissance Foundation for launching this working group. As you see from the discussion here, the group is very professional, and the discussion that we had in the beginning at the Renaissance Foundation, we saw a very expert-minded and professional discussion. It's regrettable that it was not there 9 months ago when this draft was submitted by the Cabinet of Ministers. At the moment, the MPs were somehow removed from the participation in drafting this law. When we were given this draft law in the committee under the slogans with the calls to adopt it as quick as possible in order to get some international money, we saw that the parliament that is working in a very quality-oriented way now and being a filter for non-quality laws, we saw that the parliament has declined to accept the 3 draft laws that were submitted. There is one draft law now modified by the government, which was delayed in our committee to work on it further. I'm very glad that there is such a group on the basis of which we can involve experts from different groups, including MPs and public and international experts, so that we take into account all the suggestions that are expert and professional and transparent and cause trust among people. And I think that trust is the most important thing that we should produce, because we see what is the situation with tariffs now. I don't want to get too political about this, but if there's a trust in the regulator who says, listen, this is the price you're going to pay for the country and for yourself so that we are in a better shape, then people will trust and there won't be speculation about this. This is the fight for the trust of voters. Ukraine has a huge problem. I, as an MP elected for the first time, and also my more experienced colleagues know that people stop to trust us even the next day after the elections. This is very bad when soldiers do not trust generals, when people do not trust law enforcers. So we want to finally make the process transparent and non-controlled by any enterprise and company that wants to influence it. And there are still some issues with this, and so that we make it devoid of political influence. The regulator should not be influenced politically. There's a lot of international experience, and there's no one right choice, and that's why we were learning about the experience of Canadian regulators and the US regulator. Alyona said that they are one of the most professional. Some people think that the Polish experience and the regulator that they have is more relevant to Ukraine. That's why I expect a professional discussion, and we see how the professionally structured work, thanks to the DiXi Group, is going on. And I have no doubt that in the end we'll get a professional document that will correspond to the best Ukrainian conditions. Of course, in 2 or 3 years we'll have to adapt it to the changing conditions, but I would like also to say there should be a political will so that the things that we have drawn professionally with the representatives of the coalition and the opposition, and my colleagues will confirm that everybody wants to create an independent regulator, but still you have to have a political will to take the regulator out of the political influence, or maybe there's a desire to influence the regulator in the future as well, and we should adopt a law that will create a regulator trusted by the business, by average people, and by politicians. So I hope that this work will be done, and I do believe that it will be done by thanks to this working group. We still have 5-7 minutes for questions.
Don't you think that it is a mistakable position that the law on the national committee on the national regulator is submitted for scrutiny to the Fuel and Energy Committee in the Parliament, because we have some other committees in the Parliament on economic development, something like that. And the second question, this regulator, despite the long history of its operation, has not become the advocate of the interests of the consumers, and all the tariffs are set in favor of the natural monopolists. Having reviewed the article issued by the regulator some 10 years ago, I found out that the tariffs has grown some 10-20 times during this period, and despite all this, the sector stays at the age of survival instead of its modernization. Thank you for the question. I'll try to answer them one by one. Why it was submitted to the parliamentary committee? Because there is a set of issues which this regulator regulates. These are oil, gas, electricity, and consumer rights issues. Actually, it will pass by all the parliamentary committees one by one. As for the modernization, I fully agree with you. The heat energy sector is surviving and not modernizing, the electricity sector, etc. But it's not just the problem of the fuel and energy ministry. It's the problem for many ministries. We want to move forward. The fact that we all are here today, the fact that we resumed our work on the draft law, this is a good sign that the Fuel and Energy Committee of the Parliament has a joint vision that the work on this law should be a joint work of many members of Parliament. That's why our work on this bill once again for the second time is a guarantee that it won't go to the plenary room without proper discussion and drafting. Having mentioned tariffs 10 years ago, you mentioned the regulator, the State Committee on Electricity. Now we have a new regulator where the electricity and utilities, electricity generation and utilities are united, while gas and electricity represent the national markets, which are not localized, and generation exists at the national level and is supplied to the unified grids and networks. The heating generation and heating supply is very much localized, and the function of pricing of heating services was carried out also at local level, at the level of city, state administration, local communities, trying to follow the populist policy at the local level. Local mayors and other local leaders never reviewed the tariffs for utilities, and now we have taken this function and transferred it to the national regulator. First, we established a separate regulator for utilities tariffs, and now we have a joint regulator for gas, electricity, and utilities. We should clearly separate all the markets which the regulator has to regulate. There is electricity, there is oil and gas, there is utilities sector, there is heating sector. Then involvement of consumers to discussion on tariffs. One thing is to discuss tariffs in the electricity generation. There is a discussion that Gregorian enterprises has got some privileges in terms of electricity. Then utilities tariffs is quite different thing. Customers are interested to understand how the tariffs in their local community are formed, and we think this should be reflected in the law.
I'd like to add a bit, maybe to sort of defend the committee. As a journalist, have you come to our sittings over the last 8 months? So you saw this professional discussion, and I can tell you that I, as a young politician, had a lot of apprehensions because I heard quite a lot about this odious Committee on Fuel and Energy, but most of our colleagues who are now reporting about their work say that for instance, the draft laws, they had to overcome some lobbies to do this. The Committee of the Fuel and Energy Complex works as a watch now in this convocation. I'm head of the subcommittee on energy saving, and I and Alyona Babak are sort of sharing this niche, and we do not have any problems because she's responsible for energy saving in housing services and I in business and energy. So I would like to remove your apprehension. In a minute, we'll have our next briefing, so we're rounding off. I'd like to also underline the importance of this discussion. The major news is that this working group starts its work, but in fact we have conducted a session of this working group and we discussed major problems, and it is very important. The farther we are going along the line of reforms, the more important the everyday work becomes. So I imply that everyone takes part in these sessions and conferences. I'd like to say that, yes, the rules are very important. I agree with Alyona here. But, for instance, today, the Renaissance Foundation, together with the Deputy Minister and the Deputy Chief Prosecutor, David Sakvarelidze, we have presented tests for local prosecutors that they will have to undergo in order to fill the position. This is for the first time in the history of Ukraine. The prosecutors will be appointed based on independent tests, not because they have some personal relations or connections. or because they were able to penetrate this position. This is going to be an independent appointment, and I think that the National Regulatory Commission, it is very important that people appointed here should be appointed in an independent way, and then the people of this who will work there, its head and other members will feel themselves independent in adopting decisions, and they are going to be more objective. I'd only like to draw your attention to the fact that all these MPs represent different political forces, but they do represent the European coalition in the parliament. So we tell you, we guarantee that the European coalition in the parliament works no matter what, and this is a very important statement by the end of the week, which was very, very stormy. Any questions to the speakers? You may